welcome back. So, this video, I'm just gonna do a little bit of a flashback, to something that I already talked about in the video East and West, and that deals with the Book of Acts and its composition. Well, the Book of Acts is a multi-layered text. It's been edited by at least two, probably multiple people, because I'm about to show that. So this is actually not going to be a very long video because we already sort of dealt with this. So in the textus receptus, if we read at Acts 12:13, now they were scattered about persecution that arose about Stephen, traveled to Philippi and Cyprus and Antioch and preaching the word to none but the Jews only, and etc. And it goes on talking about how they spake to Grecians, preaching the Lord Jesus, and the hand of the Lord was with them, and a great number believed and turned to the Lord. Now, the problem with this text is it takes place way after Stephen, and that's what I sort of brought out in that video. So because from here on in the book of Acts, it almost all talks about Paul. So we can discount that for now. In the opening chapters of Acts, we have speech after speech. In fact, all through the book of Acts, there's speeches, speeches, speeches. And most of those are liturgical speeches put into the mouth of the individual. But they're late. Those are late texts. So what is the general outline of Acts that we see in the opening chapters? Well, the answer is you get the choosing of a Mattathias. You get a bunch of preaching in chapter 2 and 3, which results in a few more believers, although there is a lot of persecution. In fact, the next several chapters is persecution after persecution after persecution. And then finally, according to Acts 6, they choose a bunch of people. One of them is Stephen, and that leads to the martyrdom of Stephen. However, did you notice what I just read to you? It looks like the martyrdom of Stephen's at the beginning. And that's what we see in the history of Andronicus. Stephen is killed right before him. So, as we go after 1204 into the 13th century, what sort of evidence do we have for early, very short versions of Acts just dealing with persecution? Well, for one thing, the iconography of the 13th century shows a very different view of the apostles than the one that you think about. It shows them all being persecuted, going around, hiding in caves, people are searching for them. That's the sort of thing we're actually seeing. Now remember, Peter is mentioned in the Chronicle. John, probably one of the sons of Andronicus. Philip, we probably don't need to worry about him because that's probably a story that's added later. And Stephen we've already seen. So these are the ones that show up most prominently in the early chapters of Acts. So what evidence do we have for a early version of Acts? Now remember, they would have spread out away from Turkey especially into Ukraine and Hungary and those areas, and across Turkey or Anatolia. The Gothic Church Slavonic Fragments, Ukrainian. There's dating to the late 12th century, the oldest surviving South Slavic, Cyrillic, and parchment sheets of Acts of the Apostles. They are not full books. They only contain the beginnings. The Erina Apostol is a Church Slavonic manuscript. It proved that the Acts, it's just a dozen pages. It doesn't contain all these features. It preserves the rapid-fire accounts of the persecution of Peter, John, and Philip. Yeah, Philip it just means lover of horses. It's not a name, it's a nickname. The Hungarian short version, the liturgical lectionary cut, and we have a bunch of short versions. They skip the universalizing speeches of Paul. They skip any Old Testament genealogy or anything. They're just talking about the persecution. And again, I've already dealt. So what we basically get in these regions are short versions of Acts in monastery texts. Now mainstream history would just say, oh, these are short versions of Acts, just simple versions that the monks were copying. Maybe we should look at that a different way. Maybe these are different versions of Acts. They're not all the same, they're different. They're just talking about the same general stuff, but they're telling it a different way. They're different versions. Short versions that would later become harmonized, adding Paul in, and then becoming a long, the version of Acts that we have today. So the point about it is that over the next couple of hundred years, there are going to be different layers added to Acts, and that's what we should see. So my next video is going to deal with the location of Jerusalem, and I think this one's going to be quite fun because there's a lot to say here. Thank you.